when I think of urbanity, I think of urban or city life, things that make up, your city, that are easily overlooked, that you don't really ever think about, but I can't stop. I can't get enough of it. So these are images that I collected over the past year or so, just random visits. I live outside of Boston, but I'm born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. My entire family is still in New York City, so I go down there pretty often to visit. And whenever I go down to visit, I try to budget some time to just walk around Manhattan, just to shoot anything. It doesn't really even matter. Now, it just so happens that these four images that I have prepped for us are going to be HDR images. We're going to tone map them just because I think that they have some benefit to the tone mapping. So you can see here, let me just start with a normal one of these images over here. Let me just close this out so we can see a little bit larger. This to me is city life. This is the type of thing that you just walk past. I love it. I love everything about this shot. I took this. What lens was this with? My 14? Yeah, this is the Canon 14mm prime, and I just love what's going on here. Jobs, a job sign over here, a little store. Now this is a common scene in New York City. You just have these. I never understand this. Walking around New York, I never understand how so many businesses stay open. There are so many storefronts. So that fascinates me. And I see here, I love this little clothesline with these random articles of clothing for sale. So what I want to do is, you can see if I scroll through the brackets, I just bracketed this shot just to kind of get even tone. But there are a lot of moving elements, like the plastic is moving because it was windy, and then over here in the corner, you see the flag is moving. So we're going to definitely have to do some ghost reduction, and that's kind of another good thing. I'm kind of glad we have the opportunity to show you how I can do that. So I'm going to select these images here. Let's just send them quickly to Photomatics. I'll use that because, and the reason why I like using Photomatics in this case is because I have this checkbox over here. You see it says Reduce Ghosting Artifacts. The first radio button says With Selective Deghosting Tool, which means that I actually have user-defined control over what gets noise reduction or ghost reduction. So I'm just going to rename this file, and I'm going to hit export so that it's going to send the images over to Photomatics. So right off the bat, this is the ghost reduction tool. And what I'll do here is I'm going to bring the brightness up so I can see it a little bit better. And there's certain things that are moving that I want to fix. Primarily, I want to fix this, so I want to create a selection. I'm just basically drawing around the flags. And when I make my selection, I have to right-click in it and mark selection as ghosted area. That'll change the broken line to a solid line. Now, what I can do is I can hit Preview Deghosting. What Photomatics does is it actually samples from one of the brackets. So I can see here that was a bit bright, so if I right-click and I go to set another photo for selection, I can choose one that may be a little bit darker, like this -1 exposure, and preview and see if it matches. So that matches better. I'm going to keep that. Now I'm going to create another selection pretty much around the plastic of this clothes hanger. I'm just going to come around here, all around, and then make my selection, mark it as a selection, and then hit Preview Deghosting. So that looks really good, actually. That matches really nicely. The plastic looks solid. And when I'm done here, everything else is good. I'm going to hit OK, and now the tone mapping actually occurs. So that when we get the image, let's just fit it to the screen, you can see we don't have any deghosting, or we don't have any ghosting rather, which is great. It's very important for me that I kind of minimize any ghosting, and that we would have had some pretty nasty ghosting with all that plastic moving around. So we mitigated that. So I'm going to hit default here so we can reset everything to factory settings. I like to do that when I do the webinars that have HDR in them. And I'll show you kind of how I attack it. The first thing I'll do here is I'm going to bring the strength up to 100%. It's not something I do all the time, especially if this was kind of a nature scene. If it was a nature scene with like beautiful trees and a landscape, I probably would keep it around 85% strength. But for urban and urbex scenes, like grungy scenes or scenes that have a lot of architecture and texture, I'll boost that up to 100%. Next up, I'm going to adjust the white and black points. You can see one of the things I always recommend is bringing up the histogram in Photomatics. You can do that by going to View and then selecting the 8-bit histogram. You can see on the right here I have some blown out highlights, primarily in the background over here where the sun was shining. And that's because the default value for the white point is so high. I don't know why Photomatics does it, but I'm going to drop it down and bring up the black point. Usually that's a starting point. I'll keep the black and white points around the same place. And you can see what by dropping the white point, we remove the blown out highlight. Next thing I'll do is I'm going to adjust the gamma, which is the brightness. And then I'm going to start playing around with luminosity and detail contrast, as well as the lighting adjustments. Lighting adjustments basically controls the smoothness of the tone mapping, and you can see as we go too far to the left, we start getting that weird, really bad HDR look. If you have this checkbox selected, I strongly recommend deselecting it, because a lot of times people will click Surreal or Surreal Plus, and that's where you get that really awful HDR look. So you can immediately make it better just by turning that off and keeping your lighting adjustment somewhere between 0 and -2. Although sometimes I'll actually bring it up to +1, from 0 to +2 if the light smoothing is too abrupt where you're starting to see halos. So I'm going to make it a little bit brighter, and I'm just looking to get an overall even exposure. And when I'm done, I'll hit Save and Re-import, and that'll bring the image back to Photomatics. So let's just compare these two images really quickly. Oh wait, I selected the wrong image. Sorry about that. There's my... Let's deselect this, this, and then that, and compare. Okay. So you can see we have some more detail in the background with tone mapping. And just the overall scene, you can see here we have detail through the doorway over there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to send the image to Photo Tools. There's my tone mapped image. Let me send it to Photoshop. And then I'm going to launch Photo Tools. And don't forget, feel free to ask any questions if you got them. I'll be happy to answer whatever I can. Alright, so now it's time to work with Photo Tools. Try to stylize. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go straight to the Stylized Effects category. And what I want to do is I want to give a cool look to the this metal kind of door. For that, I'll probably do something like... I might actually just desaturate and go a little black and white just on that door. So if I go to the black and white treatment, I can select something like the Mac G Black W, and I'll put it cool. When I add it to the stack, it'll convert the whole image to black and white, which I don't want. I'll bring down the saturation, or the amount, and then I'm going to invert the mask. And what that does is it hides the effect. But it frees me now to take my masking brush. I'm going to hide the entire palette. I'm going to select Paint In. And I'm just going to paint in that kind of desaturated tone on the door here. I'll just do it on the whole image, or rather on the whole area here. Because I want to give it that kind of cold look. I also painted onto this door back here because it also has kind of a metal grade to it. And I can show the mask to see if I'm missing any areas, like over here I need to fill that in. I see a question by Derek asking what is Photomatics and whether it's part of the On1 Perfect Photo Suite. So Derek, Photomatics is a product made by a company called HDR Soft. And it's a separate product, separate company, has nothing to do with us. It's probably one of the more popular tone mapping products out there. And I use it in the webinars because most people use the product. I figure it'll benefit the greatest number of people. So I use that to tone map, and then I'll go into the Perfect Photo Suite to stylize. Then Art's asking why not launch Photo Tools from Lightroom since I was already in there. I'll show you, Art, why I typically send it to Photoshop first. You absolutely could have sent it to Lightroom or to Photo Tools from Lightroom, but I'll show you why I didn't. All right, let's go back to categories and let's start stylizing again. Let me fit the image, and we'll go here, stylize, and I'm going to apply something. I'm going to try something out like Moulin Rouge, and this is what I want you guys to take away from Photo Tools: is just experiment. Some things will work, some things won't. Like this actually works pretty well. I'm going to drop the strength, though, the fade slider, to 0, and just bring it up slowly. The next thing I'm going to do is add a little bit of Blue Dawn Leonidas. I want to see what that does to the pavement. Blue Dawn Leonidas is probably one of my favorite effects in Photo Tools. So I'm going to keep this here. And the last thing I'm going to apply is just enough darkness, just to pop the shadows. Drop it down, and just very, very slightly. So if we hide this, here was our before, and then here's our after. We can continue doing things here, like let's say I want to warm up this entire area. I can go back to Golden Hour Enhancer. You see how it warms up the entire image? I don't want that. I just want the plastic here to be warm, so I can again invert the mask and just paint it in where I want it. So I just kind of want to warm this up to. I'm not going to warm the sign up though. I want the sign to have its original tone. So I'm going to fix that in a second here. So now the plastic has this weird funky cast to it, which I like even more. It looks kind of dingy. And then let me select paint out, and I'm just going to paint out because I painted a little bit in the sign and I don't want that. And so the possibilities are pretty endless of what you can do. All right, there's some questions here. Bob's asking, how are you adding the flags to your favorite list? So, Bob, the way that I add the flags here is if you pretend that there's an invisible column. If you click in this area here, it marks an effect as a favorite, and then if you go to your mini library on the right, you have a category called favorite effects, and they'll automatically be there. And then Mike's asking if I can explain paint in and paint out. Sure. So, Mike, when I added Golden Hour Enhancer, the effect Golden Hour Enhancer, it added the effect to the entire image. And what I wanted was, I only wanted it to apply to the plastic over here. So I hit this button called Invert Mask, and what it did was, it didn't remove Golden Hour Enhancer, it just hid it. Then if I went and I took my masking brush, and I selected my masking mode from paint out to paint in. So think about it. If I hid the effect, I want to paint it in wherever I want. Now let's say I painted here and, oops, I now have that streak. I want to remove that, so I'm going to change my mode to paint out and paint it out from any area I don't want the effect applied. Does that help, Mike? Okay, cool. Cauley is asking, are those effects additive? Very great question. Yes. Additive in two different ways. First, effects have relationships with each other, if that doesn't sound too weird. So I have used Photo Tools for so long where I already know which effects have the best relationships with each other. And so that's one way that it's additive. The other way is if you have your masking brush on. So let's say I want to remove a little bit of this Golden Hour Enhancer. I can change the opacity of my brush. So under the masking palette, there's an opacity slider. And if I bring it down and I select paint out, I can start removing in doses. Now, it's at 45%, so each time I pick my pen up and put it back down and remove, it removes cumulatively. So, Cauley, does that help? And then Doug's asking, can you use the X key to change paint in and paint out? Absolutely. We mimicked a lot of the Photoshop keyboard shortcuts. So right now I'm just hitting my X key. You see how it's cycling through? So that works. Can we change the order of the stack without deleting? Absolutely, Bob. Let's say I want to have Blue Dawn Leonidas to be the stronger presence. I can take it and drag it to the top. Oops. And so what it's doing is it's re-rendering the image. So here I can kind of start adjusting it a different way. I don't, Donald. Photo Tools does not work with Corel Paint Shop. Photo Tools currently requires Photoshop. So just to let you know, is the fade the same as opacity? Yeah, Doug. I was actually just talking with our product manager about this yesterday. I was like, why did we call this fade? It should actually be like strength or overall opacity. This is your strength slider for each effect. So each effect has its own strength. It's not like a total. As soon as you click on the effect, you'll get that respective strength. And also, Doug, Photo Tools does not currently support smart objects, so it wouldn't work. I know I wish it did, but right now it doesn't. So here we can go to the image, and we have it again. In this case here, I'm going to select Paint In and just paint. Let me hide this. I'm going to paint Golden Hour Enhancer back in over here because it didn't look too good. And then when we're done, we can hit, let's view it. Let's hit apply, and it'll render those changes. What does add layer mask do, Rodolfo? It actually just creates a layer mask automatically in Photoshop. That's all it does. And basically what it does is it does that automatically. So if you want now, what I can do is, because Photo Tools creates a new layer, let's say I want to remove some of the effect I want to restore some of the original color from the original layer, I can go to the layer mask, go to my masking brush, and just, paint back the original layer, which looks awful. So I don't want that. Mike, each effect is uploaded with varying amounts of fade, thus giving each effect a different overall. Yeah, basically. Yeah, Mike, basically. Yeah, Stu, I'll show you the before and after of both right now. So I'm going to leave this at this, but I want to actually go back to who was asking me about this. Oh, Art was asking me first. His first question was, why go into Photoshop? Well, because a lot of times in Photoshop, I love using adjustment layers. Adjustment layers is one of my favorite things about Photoshop. And I'll go in and I'll add typically a levels adjustment to kind of bring out the white point a little bit, maybe make the black point a little bit more dramatic, and then I can adjust the midpoint. So I'll do that sometimes, and you can see it's a very subtle but effective change. And then I'll go and I'll save it, and that will return back to Lightroom. Now, Art also asked, what are my top 5 all-around favorite effects in Photo Tools? Great question. Blue Dawn Leonidas, Golden Hour Enhancer, Thermopylae, Cyberpunk, and Just Enough Darkness. My top 5. What's the difference between Photo Tools Professional and Regular? We actually discontinued Regular Edition, I think. Or maybe we didn't. I can't remember. Let me go to the website. Products. Photo Tools. Yeah, wait, do we have? I guess we do have two different versions. One of the primary things are the effects that are included. And let me see here under text specs. Huh. I don't even remember what the difference was between the two. I'm pretty sure we got rid of the Pro and the Standard, and I think we just have Photo Tools. How many effects are in there? There are about 380, I think. The top 5? Yeah, let me, what I'll do right now is I'll quickly type in the top 5 in the chat module so you guys can see it. So 1, Blue Dawn, Leonidas. So you should see this coming up in your chat module. 2, Golden Hour Enhancer. 3, Thermopylae. 4 is Cyberpunk. And 5 is Just Enough Darkness. And all are under the stylized effects categories. So, those are my top 5. Yeah, Stu, I don't remember the difference between the specific number of effects between the two. Oh, Howard brings up a great thing also. So I did mention in another webinar that I actually built a PDF file that has all of our effects in Photo Tools. So I'm going to put the link right now so you guys can download it. If you go to our website again, and then we go to Support, and then go to Photo Tools, and then go to how do I see all the effects? You can click, I'll put this right now over here, so you guys can download the PDF that has all of the effects. Alright, so Stu wanted to see the before and after, so I'll show you these right now. So Stu, here you go. This was the tone mapped image. This is the stylized tone mapped image. So you can see that in my opinion, there's a notable design improvement to the shot. Alright, let's move on. Go to image 2. So this is another one of those images where, you know, I saw this, and it's easy to get lost in the shot. It's easy to get lost in, like, what should I do here? Because there were a bunch of bikes, and the bikes had different textures and different colors and different shapes. So how do you kind of effectively get the shot? Well, the first thing is you want to get off of your feet. You need to stop shooting in the tourist position where you're just holding the camera in front of you, standing up at eye level. Everyone sees the world at eye level, so why are you going to create a photo at eye level? Create it in a way that's unique. So I got here, it was kind of gross. I remember it smelled so bad on this corner. I'll never forget it. But I saw these bikes, and you know what? I wanted to shoot it, so I got my tripod all the way down, and I was on my knees, and I was basically trying to get a cool composition, something different. Again, this is just typical city life. Bicycles being locked up. So let's go ahead quickly and let's tone map these images. I'll do this really quickly because there's not much to it. We don't need ghost reduction because nothing is moving. And let's just save the file. The mic, yeah, these adjustments are non-destructive because they apply to a separate layer. So right off the bat here, this is looking pretty good. I might drop the gamma a bit and boost the detail contrast and drop the luminosity and bring up the white point. Okay, so that's looking good right there. Good even exposure. Let's bring it back in. So you see the more you practice with tone mapping, the faster you can kind of manipulate photomatics and just get what you need. So this compared to, let's do this compared to that. Even exposure. You have detail throughout the image. You can bring shadows back in, but like for instance here, you have a total loss of detail. And so that's kind of one of the benefits, in my opinion, of doing tone mapping effectively. You just kind of get nice even exposure. Detail through the petal. So it's those little things that I always look for. Alright, let's send this image to Photoshop, and we'll go to Photo Tools. Do I usually take 9 brackets or typically 3 or 5? So Frank, I always take 9 brackets with my promote control, and then I might not use all 9. I might only use 7 or 6. Linda, I saved the file out of Photomatix, I think, as a JPEG for the webinars, but when I'm working for production, I work in TIFF. I work in JPEG for the webinars because I don't, it speeds things up. So here, I'm going to design this in a way that will change the overall look, and I'm going to use one of my favorite effects that I listed called Thermopylae, which is right here, and it's going to change the overall dynamic of the shot. And then drop the strength down to 0, and I'll bring it up so that it's not totally strong. The next thing I'll do is I'm going to add a little bit of Orton Here's a Who. So Orton Here's a Who is an effect based on a photography style created by Michael Orton, where he essentially duplicated a layer and added a kind of like I think it was a Gaussian blur or a Gaussian blur to the image, and it gave it a very surreal look. And you'll see this right here. I'm going to add to the stack, and then it's going to punch the saturation a bit, but you can see what it does. It adds a really nice kind of soft glow. I'm going to drop it down to 0 and just bring it up a bit, but it's very pleasing to me. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I might add a little bit of cyberpunk and just apply it to this bar over here. Let's get the strength down, bring it up a bit, and then again invert the mask because that hides it. Let me make it larger. And then with the masking brush, I'm going to set my mode to paint in, and I'm not going to spend too much time, and you want to try to keep the brush within the borders, but let's just paint in the effect here because I like the contrast that it gives. And make sure you paint everything that has metal. You want to be consistent, so it could be kind of boring, but in the end it pays off because it shows the consistency in the style. So here, just kind of get through there, and then you have these little bits here that take a lot of time, but for me, this is worth it. Just seeing a photographer do this, it makes me really happy because they're really trying. But you have to go through. You see all this little metal back here? Visually, though, it plays because you'll start to give depth to your image using this blue tone. So there we go. Here's the original. And then this is what we were able to add to it. And let's actually add just enough darkness, just a bit of it. Oops, let me add it again. I think alright, there we go. Alright, so here, maybe around there. And so let's do this first. Let's apply it, and then let's go into focal point and see if we can kind of bring attention to the foreground. I see the questions coming in, guys. I'll address them once I'm done here with focal point. So here, focal point, you got your focus bug. And you can see if I put the focus bug on a certain area, the inside stays in focus. So I'm going to change the body of the bug. The bug right now is round. I want to change it to square or to planar because I want to create a plane of focus. And I'm going to kind of put it like this. And I'm also going to tilt it by putting the cursor inside the body of the bug. So here's the body, the square, and if I press the Option key on the Mac or the Alt key on a PC and drag, I can change the overall tilt. So I'm going to put it kind of over here, make it pretty wide. And then you can see right here in the foreground we've got some out of focus area, which I don't want. I want that in focus. So I'm going to select my brush, which is a focus brush. Make sure that I'm set to paint focus at 100%. And I'm just going to bring focus to the entire foreground here. And over here. Now what I can do is I can go back to the bug. Let's make this a little bit narrower. Let's go here and again, let's just paint focus on what we want. So I want this bar to be in focus. I want the pedal to be in focus. And what I can do also is fix the transition. Let me get the top here. Let me get this tire in focus, and then the tire, the shield, and let's get this tire. Yeah, this is starting to blow up in my face. Let me reset this mask. The reason why it's blowing up in my face is because let's just do this for now. Let's just get the foreground in focus. And let's bring the opacity down. And what that does is it allows me to kind of bring back focus in more of a gradual amount. And just around the edge of the... And what I'm doing now is with my Wacom tablet, I'm just kind of making a bunch of strokes to slowly bring focus in. Let me bring the opacity up so it's a bit faster, so we're not spending too much time on this. And then let's drop the brightness of the background just a bit, boost the contrast, and boost the highlight bloom. So I don't know if I would actually keep this. I might not. Yeah, you know what? I'm not even going to bother. And I'm okay with that. You know, trying something out, not liking it. And the last thing I'll do here is, again, adjustment brush. I'll add a little bit of a levels boost. And then we can save it. So here, let's compare the two. Pretty noticeable difference, right? All right, let's... Yeah, Mike, I use a promote control to bracket, and I can link you to it at the end of the webinar. And Tapas, good to see you. I do one-stop increments in between my brackets. Richard's asking what Wacom tablet I use. I actually have two, Richard. On my laptop, I have the Intuos 4 Medium because it's the exact same size as my 15-inch MacBook Pro. So when I travel, they kind of sit flush together. And then on my production Mac Pro, which is right next to me, I have the large Intuos 4. So, Stu asks a good question. I can try that out. Stu's wondering if I make a selection in Photo Tools on the image in Photoshop. If I make the selection in Photoshop and I bring it into Photo Tools, will it only work on that? Let's test it out. I never actually tested it out. Great idea. Let's send another copy of this image to Photo Tools. And so here's what Stu's asking. If I take, for instance, my quick selection brush, and let's say I only want to affect, for instance, this area, and maybe this. If I go into Photo Tools, and let's just add just enough darkness, for instance. Let's do just enough darkness. Ooh, it looks like it's almost doing everything but. No, it's adding. Okay, so let's hit apply and see if it only... No, it doesn't. The selection... Or... Does it? No, it definitely affects it. So the selection doesn't do anything in Photoshop. No, Steve, I don't use the wireless ones only because I bought both models before the wireless was released, so I didn't see the need for it. However, Steve, with that being said, if I didn't have the medium and I was buying it, I probably would get the wireless. Let me turn off my iPhone. It's making sounds. Sorry. Um, Let me see what other questions we have here. Johan, I'm not sure I understand the question you're asking about painting in the preview window. All right, so that's that. Let's work on one more image. I'm going to be doing another Urbanity session, I think later this month. So if we don't get to all of them, I'm fine with that because I have more to add. So this shot here, again, just city life. I love just trying to shoot things that people overlook. And the reason why I like it, I just like the overall arrangement of this. The little row of garbage cans anchored on the bottom right, the large white billboard, but I also like this where just someone wrote, "Have you tried my apple pie?" I just got a kick out of that, and so I bracketed it. Mike asks a good one. I see you leave your Photomatic's final image as very flat and do the rest of Photo Tools. Can you do a non-HDR imaging over the same effects you would use? Great question. So yeah, Mike, you picked up on something very important. You're absolutely right. When I work in Photomatics, the tone mapping, I am not looking to get a look. I'm just looking to get even exposure. That's all. Nothing else. So what I do in Photo Tools is to get the look. So, for instance, here I was going to tone map it. You can see the brackets here, but let's not. Let's just work on one of the regular images, like this one. This has an overall good exposure, so we'll just send this to Photo Tools from Lightroom, so that we can show what Art was saying about just sending it from Lightroom. So if you go in Lightroom to File and then plug in Extras, and then go to Photo Tools, you'll get a dialog box. And so the dialog box asks, do you want to edit the original or a copy? So I want to do a copy. In this case, I'll work with a TIFF, and we'll open it up. Can I work in 16-bit format, Doug? Yes, I always do work in 16-bit, and it'll work just fine. So we've got the image here. One of the things I'll probably do first is go to Image Optimize, and let's see here. I might do a global lighten, and then hit Add to Stack. And that just kind of brightens the image up, the overall image, because it was a bit dark. Now we can start having fun. Like here, what I might do is go to Stylized Effects and add. This is one of the effects actually that I used to use, and I kind of donated it to On One, called Urban Sickness, and this is going to change radically. It almost gives it a kind of a post-apocalyptic look, and so I typically drop this and just bring it in small amounts. The next thing I would do is probably add a little bit of thermopylae just for the sidewalk. So again, get it to a strength that you're happy with, invert the mask, let's hide this, and then let's paint it in. And so here we're just kind of painting it in, because I like what it does here. I like how it plays off of each other. For the I'm trying to think for the garbage cans what we can do. I might do Moulin Rouge here. Oops, I need to start that over. Let's see. Well, that's kind of cool. Let's bring it up high, and then let's, in this case, I'm going to paint it out of the entire billboard. I don't like that it's blowing out the billboard. So just kind of broad stroke here. Restore that. Is there anything else? Yeah, cyberpunk. I'll do cyberpunk. And I'll probably do to the whole image. But a very small amount. So let's see what the before and the after. I kind of like that. Oh, Johan, good. No, it's no problem. Johan's. You don't have to. Don't ever apologize for asking questions. Yeah, you've got the navigator here. So Johan's wondering why the preview here is not affecting the navigator. The navigator is just your overall display of the image. So if you zoom in, for instance, the navigator will always give you a full screen view, and you can actually take this little bar and pan it around. So let's say you're really zoomed in and you don't know exactly where you are in relation to your scene. You could just look up at the navigator, and let's say you want to be over here. You can do that. But it won't show the updates. Can I show the HDR enhancers? Sure. So the HDR enhancers are basically, there aren't any new effects in HDR enhancers that aren't in stylized. These are the most common ones that I would use. So it's an alias, Randy. Karen, there is no specific thing you need to do when you're installing to get Lightroom support. It automatically does it. So in Lightroom, here, let me just hit apply here. In Lightroom, you should go under File and then Plug in Extras, and you should see the On1 products. If you don't, I would recommend contacting our support. Linda, Photo Tools currently does not work as a standalone. It's one of the two products that we have that require Photoshop. Photo Tools and Mask Pro. Howard's asking, have I ever tone mapped in Photomatics and then tone mapped in HDR effects and bring both into Photoshop? I've never tried that, Howard. That's definitely interesting. Rennie, when you're sending the image, do you send it to Photoshop first, or are you sending it, are you sending it to Photoshop, or are you launching it directly from Photo Tools? Because if you send it to Photo Tools via the plugin menu, that will happen. Rennie's saying is that when the apply button is hit, the image goes right back to Aperture, not Photoshop, and that will happen. If I go to File, Plugin Extras, and select Photo Tools, when I edit the image and I hit Apply, it goes right back to Lightroom. But if I send it to Photoshop first, and then do Photo Tools, it'll bring it back to Photoshop. Can I bring up the apple pie question? Sure. Let me get to the tone map. There it is. Tapas is asking about how long is the promotional summer sale. It goes for the summer, so through August, I believe, and I'll bring that up actually right now. I just want to see if are there any other questions. Let me see here, Linda. When you import an image from Aperture CS5 and just using on-one software and save as a TIFF, how much larger is the file size? Oh, depends. That's a great question, Linda. When I work in production and I work everything uncompressed, I work in RAW, so I shoot in RAW, and I have a 5D Mark II, and the 5D Mark II RAW file is typically about 21 megabytes, sometimes 21 to 25 megabytes. When I'm done with my image, it's typically around a gigabyte, somewhere between 800 megabytes and a gigabyte. So it's a pretty big increase. Yeah, Mike, when you install Photo Tools, there's nothing you need to do special. It'll automatically be in Lightroom and in Photoshop. What lens do I use on street scenes, Stu? This was my 17 millimeter tilt shift lens, but when I'm walking around, I'll typically use either my 50 or my 2470, which is just kind of an overall good lens to use. Why don't I work from Bridge? Oh, I've been using Lightroom for years, Nelson. It's just something I love. Evo, you may have ended up with a white layer instead of the effect. If it's possible you launched Photo Tools from a layer other than the image layer, or you somehow filled it with white, but that shouldn't have been possible. Frank's asking whether there's a major loss in quality or noticeable loss in quality in working with a JPEG versus a TIFF. Look, the bottom line is a TIFF has more information in it. So yeah, there is a loss. Like I'm working in JPEG here with these images, but these images on my production machine are TIFFs, and I can see the difference in quality.